Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my brief review of The Art of War. For the uninitiated, it may seem like an appropriate question to ask, why include The Art of War by Sun Tzu on a list of books about business and entrepreneurship? Or why should I read this book? After all, the book was written by a Chinese warlord 500 years before the Common Era. The book constantly makes references to spoiling maneuvers and routing out spies and dissidents in the peasant class. And nowhere in this book does it mention how to start or run a successful business or talk about business things at all. Fortunately for us, the author wrote a defining piece on the art of strategic leadership, and he was using war as a metaphor. What the novel really does is it addresses how to approach conflicts as a leader so that you can overcome them. For this reason, you'll find this novel on the bookshelf of just about every military leader, as well as in numerous CEOs and public leaders as well. The book itself is pretty important to me. It was gifted to me as a cadet in college. It was given by a Army captain in the 7th Special Forces Group who had come back to our university to lecture us on leadership. He wrote some of the most valuable lessons to me about providing indirect leadership to subordinates on the inside cover. He signed the book with the advice to develop the situation and to listen to the people on the ground, ending with the Special Forces motto, De Oppresso Liber. These are all lessons that the author Sun Tzu imparts on his students in the vignettes contained within. However, I digress. The book itself is a relatively short novel. My version was 104 pages long. There are dozens of translations out there, some adapted specifically for business leadership, and some are more originalist in text. They all contain the same lessons regardless of which version of the book you have. The book itself is divided into 13 chapters or lessons addressing each different aspect of leadership. Some lessons are more salient than others, but you can glean just about some sort of knowledge from each chapter, regardless of what the topic is. Personally, I would recommend obtaining a looser translation or a business translation, as some of the language in my particular copy of the book uses military language that might not make sense to someone who isn't familiar with maneuvering troops on a battlefield. The business versions tend to point out the lessons a little bit or spoon feed them to you. Perhaps the most important lesson in the entire novel is that a leader plans. He envisions his success and he meticulously aligns the heavens to ensure his divine victory. That is to say, with enough forethought, almost any task on earth is accomplishable. You can overcome the odds and defeat acts of God by studying and knowing your challenge. The book also extols the virtue of personal responsibility. If you lose the battle, it's because you failed to properly prepare for the coming conflict, and there's no other excuse for it. Another lesson in the novel is about personal responsibility. Sun Tzu talks about the delegation of authority and responsibility to subordinates. He discusses raising up and developing your subordinates with the same love that you show yourself and your family. That's so when you assign them the authority to complete a task, they will tend to it with the same level of care as you would tend to it yourself. While you may delegate authority to an employee to accomplish a task, you must never delegate responsibility. If your employee fails to meet the standard, it's because you failed to develop them as their own leader and assign them an appropriate task based on their skills. If you attempt to hold them responsible for your failure to properly delegate authority, then they, in addition to your other employees, will lose respect for you. As a leader, you're always responsible for what your subordinates accomplish or fail to accomplish. There's no force in nature that could cause a subordinate to fail other than their leader failing them first. Interestingly, Sun Tzu may have been the first author to recommend performing what we call a SWOT analysis in modern times. That is, before you begin to approach a conflict, you should always recognize all your internal and external strengths and weaknesses. That way, when you do approach the conflict, whether it's an internal or external conflict, you've properly accounted for all the variables that could impact the outcome. This is the first step to planning and preparing for conflict. Another lesson Sun Tzu imparts on us is that you must lead from the front. This is to say that leadership is about service and sacrifice to your subordinates, and it is the price you pay for being able to accomplish your goals in life. It's really what separates leaders from bosses, and if you have ever had a boss versus a leader, I think you would understand what that means. But being a leader is about earning the respect of your subordinates, whereas a boss is telling them what to do. Your subordinates must see that you are willing to sacrifice the most before you ask them to sacrifice or struggle for your goals at all. If you're not willing to serve as a leader, then you will have a purely transactional relationship with the people working for you. If you're unwilling to be the first person in the office and the last to leave, then step aside, because ultimately some other business or some other person will replace you. Just give it enough time. Probably the less salient lessons in this novel are about subterfuge and spying. Obviously, we don't have to cross troops and supplies through enemy territory, and we're not feigning maneuvers to position ourselves for an advantage in battle. Hopefully, also, we're not spreading lies and rumors about our competitors, because it would be unethical, to say the least, if not illegal. However, there is something to be said of playing your cards close to your chest. Disseminate the information to your employees that they need to be able to make decisions about the tasks you give them, and keep the rest to yourself. This is to prevent bad actors from trying to ruin your plans. And there will always be some sort of bad actor out there. Regardless, I highly encourage every single one of you to go out and to get a copy of this book. Not only will you be a better leader because of it, but through reading it, I think you'll also be a better person. You'll also look cool for having a 2,000 plus year old book on your shelf, and quoting ancient Chinese proverbs is always a popular thing to do with dinner conversation. Please just don't behead anyone, and don't burn any villages down, even if they're in your way. But thank you for listening to me about my book review, and I hope you all get a chance to go out and read it. Thank you.